Far within a dense forest, a dragon lived peacefully inside a cave alongside a single precious egg. Then one morning, she left her nest to search for food so there would be something ready for her hatchling when it emerged. Unfortunately, the moment she soared into the sky, a group of human hunters spotted her and struck her down before she had any chance to escape. With the dragon gone, the cave and the egg were left completely unprotected. Not long afterward, a pregnant magical cat wandered through the area and discovered the empty cave. Seeing that nobody remained to claim it, she decided to make the place her new home. Soon, the cat gave birth to several kittens inside the cave. While she was busy caring for her newborn children, the abandoned dragon egg suddenly cracked open and hatched. The young dragon's first sight was the cat standing over him, so he naturally assumed she was his mother. The cat immediately realized that the strange-looking hatchling was definitely not one of her own offspring. Even so, she couldn't bring herself to abandon him. Raising youngsters from other species was an unfamiliar territory for her, as she had cared for outsiders before. Believing she could handle the challenge, she welcomed the baby dragon into the family and informed her kittens that they now had a brand new little brother. Sometime later, the mother cat brought all of her children along on a hunting trip so they could learn important survival skills. While moving quietly through the tall grass, they spotted several mice gathered around a patch of berries. Seizing the opportunity, the cat carefully stalked her prey before launching herself forward and catching multiple mice in a single attack. After the hunt, she began teaching her kittens how to channel lightning magic through their tails. The young cats picked up the technique surprisingly fast. However, when the dragon attempted to copy them, absolutely nothing happened. Seeing how disappointed he was, the cat and her children decided to help him discover what abilities he possessed instead. After experimenting with several possibilities, they eventually learned that the dragon could use his wings to fly and release fire from his mouth. His control over these talents was still rough, but at least he finally knew where his strengths lay. Just then, the mother cat sensed danger approaching nearby, so she immediately instructed all of her children to stay silent and hide among the bushes. Afterward, a group of humans passed through the area. Fortunately, none of them noticed the hidden family. The youngsters, however, were confused by their mother's reaction because they had never encountered creatures like those before and couldn't understand why she seemed so cautious. The mom cat explained that those beings were called humans, and according to her, they were among the most frightening creatures in existence. Some humans could be incredibly compassionate, while others displayed unimaginable cruelty. The worst part was that there was no reliable way to tell which kind one might encounter, and because magical cats like them were considered valuable by humans, getting spotted could lead to serious trouble. The young ones finally understood that humans were no joke, so they began training themselves to remember the smell of mankind, hoping they could stay far away from them for the rest of their lives. And after seeing how focused and determined her children had become, the mom cat felt certain they would be ready to protect themselves when the time eventually came for them to leave the cave and wander into the outside world. For a while, life continued peacefully for the cat family. But a few days later, while they were out hunting, a glowing magic circle suddenly formed beneath the mother's paws. Her children panicked and asked what was happening as her body slowly began fading away, but the mother immediately understood the situation. There was no way to escape it because this was a summoning circle created by humans. Whenever a human attempted to summon a familiar, the magic would randomly drag a creature from somewhere in the wild. And by pure rotten luck, the mom cat had been selected this time. So before she vanished completely, she left her children with one final lesson. She had already taught them everything they needed to know about hunting, so if danger ever found them, she wanted them to protect each other, rely on one another, and work together whenever survival demanded it. Then the mother was teleported away, and her children were left behind to survive without her. As the years passed, the older cats eventually moved out of the cave one by one, until the dragon became the only one still living there. He had fully adapted to life in the wild, but with all his siblings gone, he could not help feeling painfully alone, because there was no one left for him to play with, talk to, or spend his days beside. A long time passed with the dragon living by himself like that, until one day his older sister and her husband finally returned to the cave. She was pregnant and had come back looking for a safe place where she could give birth and raise her children. The dragon was overjoyed and quickly became the fun uncle to his little nephews and nieces. He taught them everything his mom had once taught him, from the basics of hunting to the most important rule of all, which was to never get anywhere near humans. But before he even realized it, those kittens had grown up too, and they eventually left the cave to build lives and families of their own. Watching them mature and become capable of surviving on their own made him genuinely happy, but he would have been lying if he said it did not hurt to be abandoned by silence all over again. Since a dragon's life lasts far longer than a cat's, he slowly understood that he would most likely outlive every sibling he had ever known, and that thought weighed heavily on his heart. But then, before he could sink too deep into that loneliness, an unfamiliar cat appeared near the cave, and as she came closer, the dragon noticed that her scent was strangely similar to one of his siblings. The cat stepped forward and introduced herself, explaining to the dragon that she was expecting kittens and desperately needed somewhere safe to deliver them. She told him that her father had once spoken about his own brother, describing him as a cat with wings, and he had always said that if she ever needed protection, this cave would be the safest place she could go. When the dragon heard that his brother had trusted him so deeply, his eyes immediately filled with happy tears. As the years passed, the dragon became even larger and far more powerful. He mastered stronger forms of magic and eventually gained the ability to speak with the spirits that naturally lived throughout the forest. Then one day, while chatting with one of those spirits, he casually referred to himself as a cat with wings. The spirit was completely confused by that statement, so it gently explained that he was not a cat at all. This completely stunned the dragon because his mother had vanished before she ever had the chance to tell him the truth. So he returned to his cave and told his nieces and nephews that he was not actually a cat like he had always believed. But they honestly did not care even a little, because they had figured that out a long time ago, especially since he was already about 20 times bigger than them. Instead, they simply asked if he could keep teaching them magic, since they were really enjoying it, and the dragon happily agreed. Life stayed peaceful for a while after that, but one day, as the dragon was flying back home, he suddenly noticed a group of humans standing near a pile of dead cats. The moment he realized that some of those cats were members of his own family, rage exploded inside him. Without hesitating, he dove straight toward the humans and burned them into ash with one blast of fire. At first, he could not understand why humans would slaughter so many cats at once if they were only hunting for food, but the spirits soon told him the ugly truth. The humans had never planned to eat them. They were killing the cats only to strip off their fur and sell it afterward. Once the dragon learned that, his anger became even worse. If the humans had killed them for food, he might have accepted it as part of the natural cycle, because every living creature has to survive somehow. But murdering cats just so some worthless idiots could make money from their fur was something he would never forgive. So he immediately flew to the city those damn hunters had come from, landed on top of their city wall, and declared himself the guardian of every magic cat living in the forest. He announced that the hunters who had gone out that morning to kill cats had already been burned to nothing by his flames. Then he warned the entire town that if anyone ever entered the forest to hunt cats again, he would burn their whole city down until nothing but ash remained. The humans froze in terror as the city's knights lifted their lightning staves and fired crackling bolts toward the dragon, hoping to bring the beast down. But no matter how many chibi attacks they launched, not a single blast even marked his freaking scales. If anything, their pathetic attempt only made his anger burn hotter than before. So the dragon struck back, scorching part of the city and incinerating the soldiers who had dared to point their weapons at him. At first, he had only planned to warn the humans and leave, but after they attacked him, he seriously began thinking about wiping their entire city off the map. But while he was glaring down at the burning streets, he noticed a young girl sobbing in the middle of the flames. At first, he felt absolutely nothing for her because in his eyes, humans were nothing but rotten trash. Then a small cat stepped out from behind the girl and stood in front of her, trying to protect her from danger. That sight immediately brought back the words his mother had once taught him. Some humans were cruel, but others were gentle and kind. And in that moment, the dragon understood that destroying every kind of human because of the wicked ones would be unjust. So he rose into the sky and gave the city one last warning. From that day forward, no human was allowed to kill cats in the forest unless it was for food or true self-defense, and anything beyond that would bring his rage upon them. After delivering his warning, the dragon returned to the forest. Years passed peacefully after that, and the humans learned to obey the new rule so they would never provoke the dragon again. Then one quiet night, after the young prince of the human kingdom had been put to bed, he slipped out of his chamber under the cover of darkness. He wanted to practice magic alone, where no one could watch him fail. The prince had been born with very weak magical talent, and if he ever hoped to inherit the throne and meet his father's expectations, he had to train harder than everyone else. But when he tried casting a simple fire spell to burn a single leaf, nothing happened at all, proving just how terrible he still was at magic. Even so, the prince refused to give up and kept trying again and again. Eventually, the cat wandered over and sat beside him, and just seeing it lifted his spirits a little. Feeling encouraged, the prince attempted the spell one more time, and this time he actually managed to ignite the leaf. He was overjoyed by his small success and happily thanked the cat for supporting him. But then he suddenly realized that this was not an ordinary cat. It was one of the magical cats from the forest. During his lessons, he had been warned that if one of those cats ever entered the city, no one was allowed to hurt or kill it, because if they did, the imperial dragon would return and burn the entire city to ashes. After remembering that warning, the prince becomes much more careful, so he asks the cat if it came from the forest. Once the cat confirms it, he offers to guide it back, but the cat says it already knows the way home and turns around to leave. Because of that, the prince assumes everything should be fine. Yet the very next day, the cat returns to the palace to see him again and help him with his training. Since the cat is surprisingly friendly, it does not take long for the two of them to become close friends, and from then on, they meet every night to practice magic and talk. Eventually, the king finds out about their secret meetings, and at first he becomes deeply worried because he fears the dragon might misunderstand the situation and think they are keeping the cat there against its will, which could make him come back and destroy the city. But at the same time, when the dragon first appeared, he had been reasonable enough to give them 2 warnings instead of immediately wiping them out, so the king believes things should be fine as long as they explain the truth properly. Before long, the dragon descends into the city, instantly throwing the townspeople into chaos because everyone assumes he has returned to burn them all to ashes. But in reality, the dragon has only come to search for one of his kittens, who has not returned to the forest for several days. A short time later, the cat finally comes out, and the dragon immediately demands to know why it has been away from home for so long. The cat explains that it made friends with a child who lives in the city, and since that child is awful at magic, it wants to stay and teach him. The dragon reminds the cat that he already warned him that humans are dangerous and that he should keep his distance from them. But the cat argues back, saying his friend is not dangerous at all. And when the prince appears in front of him, the dragon can tell right away that the boy does not have even the slightest trace of danger in him. Because of that, he agrees to let the cat stay and teach him. But since the boy is the prince of this kingdom, the dragon believes it is only proper to ask the king's permission before allowing one of his cats to live there permanently. So he uses transformation magic to shrink himself into a small cat form, making himself far less terrifying, and then begins walking toward the castle. When he reaches the main hall, the king welcomes him as an honored guest and naturally has no problem with one of the dragon's cats staying in the kingdom. Still, he asks whether the dragon is truly comfortable with this, since he was the one who taught the cats magic, and the spells they use could easily be considered a hidden art. The dragon says there is no issue because most of it is just knowledge he picked up from speaking with the spirits. To him, it is nothing secret. But in truth, the dragon is the only one in the area capable of communicating with those spirits in the first place, meaning this is knowledge no ordinary person could ever obtain. Even so, since the dragon has no objections, it is officially decided that the cat may remain in the kingdom and teach the prince for as long as he wishes. From that date onward, whenever a new royal child was born, a cat from the forest would eventually visit the kingdom. And if that cat became friends with the prince or princess, it would teach them magic and remain by their side. Thanks to this tradition, the bond between the humans, the cats, and the dragon stayed perfectly balanced for generations. Meanwhile, the mother cat who vanished earlier had been transported all the way to a training hall inside the Human Kingdom's Magic Academy. The person responsible was a student named Ana Rosa, a girl whose confidence was practically non-existent. Still, she had somehow managed to complete the summoning spell successfully, so her instructor congratulated her before asking her to calm the cat down and explain the situation, since the poor creature had probably arrived with no idea what was going on. As the rest of the class continued struggling with their own summoning attempts, Ana sat beside the mother cat and explained that the spell was designed to call forth a beast that matched the caster's nature, allowing that creature to become their magical familiar. According to her teacher, completing such a summoning normally required hours of effort and sometimes even several days. Ana, however, had succeeded almost instantly, but instead of feeling proud, she became convinced that something had gone wrong, because the idea that she might actually be talented at something simply made no sense to her. The mother cat could hardly believe how hopeless Ana was when it came to believing in herself, and it immediately became obvious that this girl needed someone to straighten her out. Her thoughts briefly returned to the kittens she had left behind, but she knew they would manage. She had already taught them how to find food, avoid danger, and survive on their own, and they were nearly old enough to leave her care anyway. With that settled, the cat decided to put her parenting skills to use on Ana instead, because this human clearly needed far more supervision than her actual children. She calmly announced that she would be taking care of Ana from that moment onward, only for Ana to completely panic when the animal suddenly answered her in perfect human speech. From then on, whenever Ana finished her classes, she met the cat outside and followed her to the academy's training grounds for private magic practice. During their first session, the cat asked Ana to show her one of the spells she already knew. Ana attempted to create an ice needle, but the magic collapsed before taking proper shape, leaving nothing behind except a tiny frozen lump. Ana immediately lowered her head in disappointment, frustrated that the spell had failed again. The cat, however, told her there was no reason to feel embarrassed and decided to cast the spell herself, giving Ana a proper example to study. The cat begins the demonstration by flicking her tail toward the wall and releasing a powerful burst of lightning. Ana is left staring in amazement, since she has never witnessed a spell with that much force before. But after watching the cat repeat the technique several times, she gradually begins to recognize the way the magic is being formed. Feeling like she might finally understand it, Ana raises her staff toward the wall and copies the exact motions she just saw. To her surprise, a small spark of lightning actually shoots from the tip, though it is still far too weak to cause any real damage. The cat then remembers that human mages normally rely on chance to help activate their spells, so she tells Ana to repeat the word stupefy while casting. Ana follows her instructions, and this time the lightning comes out with noticeably more power. Satisfied with the improvement, the cat orders her to keep using the spell repeatedly until her body grows accustomed to controlling the magic and handling the loss of mana. There is another benefit as well. By constantly emptying her magical reserves and allowing them to recover, Ana can gradually increase the total amount of power she is capable of holding. By the end of the training session, Ana can barely stay on her feet. The cat praises her for working so hard, but before allowing her to rest, she asks Ana to attempt the ice needle spell one more time. Even though she is completely worn out, Anna gathers what little mana she has left and casts it again. This time, the result is far closer to an actual needle, and the projectile moves much faster than before. It is still nowhere near strong enough to serve as a proper attack spell, but the improvement is obvious. Naturally, the cat refuses to let her stop there and tells Anna to stand back up and try it again, completely ignoring the fact that the poor girl is already exhausted. Over the following days, Anna starts eating much larger meals at breakfast. Training with the cat consumes so much energy that she needs every bit of food she can get just to survive their sessions. Her classmates quickly notice the difference, and they are happy to see Anna looking healthier and far more lively than usual. The cat has also started accompanying her during lessons. Normally, students are forbidden from bringing summoned creatures into the classroom, but the lecturer makes a special exception for her. In return, the cat agrees to assist with his research into how magical beasts raise and care for their young. Later that afternoon, while Anna and the others are eating lunch, the cat slips away into the nearby forest for some hunting practice. She does not want her instincts to become dull, but unfortunately, there are hardly any mice living near the academy. Instead, she begins hunting strange creatures known as carbuncles. Their magic stones happen to taste unbelievably good, and after trying them, the cat decides she could happily eat these things every single day. That evening, Anna meets the cat again for their usual practice. However, the cat quickly notices that Anna runs out of mana much sooner than normal. Anna explains that she had already spent a huge amount of magical energy during class, so she arrived at training with almost nothing left. Hearing that, the cat decides not to push her any further and ends the session early. Anna leaves to get some dinner, while the cat heads toward the professor's room to fulfill her promise and assist him with his research. The cat spends quite a while talking with the professor and explains that cats normally continue caring for their children for around 2 years before they become fully mature. The professor is genuinely surprised since he never imagined they would remain with their young for that long. However, the cat tells him that 2 years is actually considered a fairly short parenting period because plenty of other species stay with their children for much longer. In fact, she has personally raised several completely different kinds of creatures over the years. Naturally, the professor becomes even more interested and starts asking exactly which species she has cared for. But the cat honestly has no idea because she never bothered learning what any of them were. Once she decided they were her children, their species simply stopped mattering to her. After finishing their conversation, the cat leaves the professor's office and heads back toward the dormitory. Unfortunately for her, the moment Anna spots her, she grabs the cat and immediately drags her away for a bath. The cat has hated water for as long as she can remember, but Anna refuses to let her escape. Since the academy gave her special permission to attend lectures alongside the students, Anna believes it would be rude to let her sit in class while covered in dirt. So whether the cat likes it or not, she is getting washed, and judging by her expression, she absolutely does not like it. As time passes, Anna and the cat continue growing closer and spend nearly every day together. But during one of their lessons, the summoning circle inside the classroom suddenly activates on its own. Somehow, the spell is connected directly to the demon realm, and waves of monsters immediately begin flooding through the portal. The teacher orders every student to prepare for combat and ready their strongest attack spells. Thanks to all the brutal training she has endured, Anna reacts before anyone else and starts firing immediately. She handles most of the monsters herself, and with the rest of the class supporting her, they eventually manage to wipe out every creature that entered the room. Just when everyone believes the danger is past, the summon gate suddenly lights up again. This time, however, the creature that steps through is not some ordinary monster, but a powerful greater demon. The entire class freezes in terror because they instantly understand that none of them are strong enough to defeat something on that level. Instead of looking afraid, the cat becomes unbelievably excited and happily says how wonderful it is to see him again. Once the demon gets a clear look at her, he is completely stunned and realizes that the cat standing in front of him is actually his mother. As it turns out, the cat discovered him when he was still young and decided to raise him, just like she would later do with the dragon after him. They have not seen each other in a very long time, so she is relieved to see that he has grown up safely. The demon explains that he had heard about his mother being carried away by a summoning circle, but he never imagined he would suddenly find her inside a human magic academy. He then asks why she has not returned home yet, since the rest of his siblings must be missing her, especially the dragon who was apparently still living alone inside the same cave. The cat calmly explains that every one of her children was already capable of surviving without her by the time she disappeared. Because of that, she decided this was the perfect opportunity for them to become more independent. Besides, she is currently busy raising Anna, and this human girl clearly needs her help far more than the others do right now. The cat then notices that the summoning gate is still connected to the demon realm and comes up with a new idea. Since the path is already open, they could use the demon world as a training area for Anna and the other students. The demon immediately rejects the suggestion, explaining that the entire reason he came through the portal was to shut it down before it caused more trouble. But once his mother makes it clear that she wants the gate left open, he knows better than to argue with her. In the end, he reluctantly gives in and agrees to keep the portal active for her sake. At that moment, the demon finally notices that his mother now has 2 tails and immediately asks what happened to her. The cat casually assumes that she probably evolved after eating a few too many carbuncles. Aside from the extra tail, however, she has not noticed any major difference in herself, except that her lifespan has become much longer. As far as she is concerned, that is excellent news because it means she will now live long enough to continue looking after Anna properly. Following that incident, the demon reaches an official agreement with the Academy's headmaster, allowing the students to use a designated section of the demon realm as a training area. With access to what is essentially its own private dungeon, the Academy quickly gains a great deal of attention, and over the years, dozens of talented mages begin enrolling there. Anna also continues growing under the cat's guidance and eventually becomes a legendary mage known as the Witch of the Ice Storm. Many stories describe her as an unstoppable sorceress capable of controlling ice and lightning at the same time. And wherever Anna appears, people say a mysterious two-tailed cat is never far behind. Years later, Anna returns to the Academy as one of its newest instructors. While she gets settled into her new position, the cat makes her way toward the training room to visit the professor, who has now become the headmaster of the Magic Academy. It has been quite some time since they last met, so she is just about to greet him properly when the demon suddenly emerges from the portal and demands to know what she's doing there. The cat explains that she had actually been planning to visit him in the demon realm, but the demon immediately tells her that going down there would be far too dangerous. Naturally, the cat takes that personally and reminds him that she is not some helpless old lady who needs to be protected from everything. She also points out how rude it was for him to interrupt her while she was in the middle of greeting the headmaster. However, the demon has no intention of letting everyone watch his mother lecture him, so he quickly grabs her and pulls her through the portal before she can embarrass him any further. Once they return to his room in the demon realm, the demon asks her to stop scolding him in front of other people. Around here, he has built a reputation as a terrifying and powerful demon, and that image will completely fall apart if everyone sees him being treated like a child by his mother. The cat understands his concern and promises that she will try to remember that in the future. But judging by her tone, the demon somehow feels even less confident than he did before. Not long afterward, the cat returns to the Academy to see how Anna is handling her new students. The class is thrilled to meet her since Anna has become incredibly famous over the years. Unfortunately, the moment she has to introduce herself, Anna completely freezes. Her magical abilities may have improved beyond recognition, but when it comes to speaking in front of people, she is still the same nervous girl she has always been. Seeing that Anna is struggling, the cat steps in and takes control of the situation. She assures the students that they have nothing to worry about because with Anna as their teacher, they are guaranteed to learn a great deal. And if there is anything they still fail to understand after the lesson, they are welcome to come ask the cat for help. However, she warns them not to expect an easy time because her training will be far more demanding than anything Anna plans to put them through. Sometime later, the red dragon is relaxing inside his cave when two married pairs of cats arrive to see him. Both couples are expecting kittens and have come to ask for his protection during the births. But as they enter, the dragon notices that one of the female cats is limping, so he immediately asks what happened to her. She explains that a group of humans tried to capture her for her fur, and she barely managed to escape. Because of that, she returned to the cave to ask if he would allow her to give birth there once again. The dragon is enraged. He had already given the humans a very clear warning about harming the forest cats, yet some of them apparently decided to ignore it. Without wasting another second, he leaves the cave and flies off to track down the people responsible. While searching the forest, the dragon suddenly hears the sounds of a struggle nearby. When he follows the noise, he discovers three cats brutally teaching a group of humans a lesson. The dragon lands beside them and demands to know what the hell is going on. The cats explain that these humans are terrible people, so they are only giving them the punishment they deserve. Instead of praising them, the dragon angrily scolds the cats. He tells them that their first concern should have been helping the injured female and making sure she returns safely, not staying behind to torment the humans. The cats quickly defend themselves and explain that these men were planning to capture all the cats in the forest and transport them to a kingdom far away. That catches the dragon by surprise since it means the humans are not working for the kingdom located near the forest. The cats still want to continue punishing them, but the dragon orders them to stop immediately. He explains that killing these people could create a conflict between the two kingdoms. If that happened, innocent cats living inside human towns might end up paying the price for something they had nothing to do with. Rather than killing them, the dragon tells the cats to drive the humans to the nearest town and hand them over to the authorities so they can be punished properly. The cats are surprisingly excited by the idea and agree right away, but before they leave, they ask what the dragon plans to do next. He tells them he's returning to the cave, since there are two pregnant mothers waiting for his help. The dragon quickly makes his way back, and the cats inside are visibly relieved the moment they see him. However, there is no time to relax because they immediately announce that the babies are already coming. The dragon asks the first mother whether she has started having contractions, and she explains that her stomach suddenly began hurting before her water broke. While checking on her, the dragon notices that the injury on her leg has completely disappeared. He turns to her husband and asks whether he used healing magic on her. The male cat nervously admits that he did. The dragon then explains that the healing spell did more than repair her leg. It also filled the unborn kittens with additional energy, causing them to become active and try to come out much earlier than they were supposed to. The father immediately apologizes, explaining that he was terrified for his wife and had no idea what else he could do. The dragon understands why he made that choice, but reminds him that magic can have unexpected effects, especially during pregnancy. He needs to consider the possible consequences before casting a spell in a situation like this. Right then, the second pregnant cat suddenly cries out that her stomach is hurting badly as well and nervously asks whether she might also be going into labor. Both husbands instantly begin panicking, but the dragon remains completely calm and firmly tells them to pull their shit together. Not long afterward, both mothers safely deliver their kittens, and every newborn comes out perfectly healthy. Their fathers can barely contain their happiness as they finally meet their children, while the rest of the cats crowd around to get a better look. Everyone keeps talking about how ridiculously adorable the kittens are, but the dragon only laughs and points out that the older cats looked exactly the same barely a year ago. And just like them, these tiny kittens will grow up before anyone even realizes it. The dragon then warns the older cats not to get lazy with their hunting and magic practice. Otherwise, once these kittens become stronger, they might start making fun of their older siblings for falling behind. Meanwhile, one especially curious kitten becomes completely fascinated by the dragon's claw and starts chewing on it without the slightest fear. His father finds the whole thing hilarious and jokes that the little guy might grow into an incredible hunter someday. 2 months pass, and the kittens are already much larger than before. One of the mothers decides it is time to begin preparing proper food so they can slowly stop relying on milk. The second mother agrees, since their husbands would never manage to catch enough food to feed everyone by themselves. Before heading out, the 2 mothers ask the dragon to keep an eye on the kittens, knowing they will be completely safe as long as he is there. While the mothers are away, the same kitten immediately returns to his favorite activity and starts gnawing on the dragon's claw again. His parents laugh at how obsessed he seems to be with it. They also notice that whenever he balances himself on his hind legs, he almost resembles a tiny human. This leads them to joke that perhaps he will someday work inside the royal castle and serve a prince or princess. The dragon does not find that idea amusing at all. He admits that a few cats have managed to find good humans and live peaceful lives with them, but in his opinion, willingly moving into a human settlement is still like placing your own life in danger. He looks down at the kitten and tells him to grow up properly and remain in the forest where he belongs. Unfortunately, the kitten pays absolutely no attention to the lecture and continues happily biting the dragon's claw. Another 6 months go by, and the kittens have now grown almost as large as adult cats. Since they are finally old enough to begin learning useful skills, the dragon decides to teach them the basics of hunting and magic. He starts by casting a transformation spell, shrinking his body and taking the form of a winged cat. He explains that this kind of magic allows the caster to alter their physical form, either reducing or increasing their size. The kittens are amazed by his new appearance, and instead of listening to the lesson, they immediately climb all over him and turn the whole thing into a game. The dragon patiently allows them to play for a little while before asking whether they are finally ready to pay attention. Once they settle down, he explains that hunting means tracking down prey, catching it with their claws and fangs, and then eating it. But since no living creature wants to become someone else's meal, they must always expect their target to resist. To make the lesson more realistic, the dragon suddenly changes again, this time transforming into an enormous bear-like beast. Most of the kittens panic and scatter in every direction, quickly hiding wherever they can. However, one kitten remains where he is and begins growling at the monster. The dragon tells them that whenever they believe they are about to become prey, their first instinct should be to escape. A trapped creature will fight with everything it has, and some animals are even capable of using magic to defend themselves. That is exactly why mastering magic is just as important as learning how to hunt. The dragon soon returns to his winged cat form and explains that the cats living throughout the forest have spent generations developing electric magic. Since it has become their specialty, that will be the first type of magic he teaches the kittens. He then notices one of the little ones standing beside him and asks whether he actually ran away during the demonstration like he was told. The kitten proudly confirms that he did, clearly pleased with himself for following the lesson correctly. Sometime afterward, the prince of the nearby human kingdom travels deep into the forest to meet the dragon. He admits that this is the first time he has ever seen the dragon in person, and the dragon replies that the prince is also the first human who has ever managed to reach this part of the forest. One of the kittens overhears them and asks his father who the dragon is speaking with. His father explains that the visitor is a human. The kittens are confused, so he tells them that this man is the prince of a human kingdom, and also an old friend of their grand uncle. Since the prince does not appear dangerous at all, the kittens begin wondering whether humans are truly as frightening as everyone claims. Their father explains that this particular human is different because he is their friend and humans are not all alike. Some of them can be gentle and trustworthy, while others are dangerous enough that the kittens should never lower their guard around them. The prince then walks closer and tells the cats that being welcomed by so many of them is a genuine honor. The kittens are immediately impressed by how calmly and respectfully he speaks. Some of them even begin saying that they would love to visit the human kingdom at least once in their lives. The moment the dragon hears that, he releases a long, exhausted sigh. More and more young cats are becoming fascinated with human cities, and he quietly begins regretting ever allowing the prince to visit in the first place. A while later, the dragon decides the kittens are finally ready to leave the cave and experience the forest for themselves. Naturally, the little ones are nervous as they follow him between the trees, since everything outside their home still feels unfamiliar. But after they have traveled for a while, the dragon suddenly orders them to climb the nearest tree and remain hidden. From the safety of the branches, the kittens watch a group of adventurers fighting nearby. They immediately notice that these humans are nothing like the friendly prince they met earlier. The dragon then points toward the creatures attacking them and explains that they are wolves, animals the kittens have already encountered before. One of the kittens notices that an adventurer appears to have claws attached to his hands. However, the dragon explains that humans are not born with claws or fangs suitable for combat. Instead, they rely on weapons they can carry, and this particular man is simply using a weapon designed to resemble animal claws. He then adds that weapons are not the only advantage humans possess because some of them are also capable of using magic. One kitten is surprised and asks whether humans can truly cast spells. The dragon confirms it and explains that humans develop in different ways. Some are born with tremendous physical strength and fight directly, while others may have weaker bodies but compensate by learning powerful magic. Once the adventurers finish their battle and leave the area, the kittens carefully climb back down. The dragon tells them that witnessing a real fight was a valuable experience, but he also warns them not to assume that every human is that capable. Those adventurers were highly skilled professionals, and people of their level rarely travel this deep into the forest. However, one kitten can no longer think about anything except the adventurer who used magic. He excitedly tells the others how incredible it was to watch a human channel magical power through his staff, and even as they make their way back toward the cave, he continues talking about the spell without stopping for a single moment. Eventually, the kitten's older brothers and sisters become old enough to leave the cave and begin living on their own. Before sending them away, the dragon tells them that their futures belong to them, and each one should follow whatever path feels right. He describes the many different lives forest cats have chosen throughout the years, then asks them one by one what they hope to do after leaving home. Two of the young cats say they want to see a human city for themselves, while another plans to settle near the lake and establish a territory there. The dragon warns them to remain cautious no matter where their journeys take them, and reminds them that they can always return to the cave whenever they are in danger or need help. The younger kittens beg their siblings to stay safe, promising that the whole family will come rescue them if they ever get into trouble. Before setting off, the older cats tell the little kitten to behave, listen carefully to the dragon, and follow everything he teaches him. Once they disappear into the forest, the dragon turns to the kittens who remain and explains that their own time to leave will arrive next year. Until then, they need to keep improving their hunting skills, and the little ones eagerly promise that they will. Several days later, a new litter of kittens is born inside the cave. The dragon is relieved that this delivery is far easier than the chaotic births from the previous year. He tells the older kittens that they have officially become big brothers and sisters, which means they now have a responsibility to set a good example for the newborns. He also reminds them that kittens grow at an unbelievable speed, and it does not take long for them to understand exactly what he meant. Desperate to impress their younger siblings and prove how powerful they have become, the older kittens decide that the best way to show off is by hunting down an entire bear. After somehow defeating the creature, they combine their magic and carry its enormous body all the way back to the cave. The dragon and their parents are left completely stunned when they see a group of young cats dragging a dead bear behind them. As the newborn kittens stare at their older siblings with pure admiration, the proud hunters wait for the praise they are certain they deserve. Instead, the dragon immediately loses his temper and reminds them that his lesson was to run whenever they encountered a bear, not challenge one to a fight. Their parents join in as well, warning that trying something so reckless again could easily get every one of them killed. Despite the brutal scolding, news of their achievement soon spreads throughout the forest, and the other animals can hardly believe that several young cats managed to bring down a bear without any help. Before they realize it, the day finally arrives for this group to leave the cave as well. Just as he did with their older siblings, the dragon asks each cat what kind of life they intend to pursue. One says she hopes to find a husband and start a family of her own, while another wants to settle beside the lake near the reed fields. A third chooses a territory located close enough to the cave that she can still visit from time to time. The final female cat announces that she wants to travel into the human kingdom, and two of the others immediately decide that they would like to accompany her. Then one of the males casually declares that he intends to become a human adventurer, leaving the entire family staring at him in stunned silence. The dragon asks how a cat is supposed to become a human in the first place, but the young male proudly reveals that he has spent a long time mastering transformation magic. Before anyone can question him further, he casts the spell and changes into a human right in front of them. He explains that he plans to travel between different cities while maintaining this form and earn a living as an adventurer. The dragon is clearly seconds away from exploding, but the other cats wisely begin saying their farewells before he can start another lecture. They quickly head toward their chosen destinations, while the younger kittens remain outside the cave, waving excitedly and telling their siblings to stay safe as they watch them leave the nest behind. Late one night, a black cat quietly makes his way toward the human city. He almost never leaves his own territory, but this time the dragon personally asked him to handle an important favor. Long ago, the dragon had made an agreement with the king of the human kingdom. Whenever a new child was born into the royal family, he would send one of the forest cats to visit and greet them. A dragon may not enjoy dealing with humans, but once he gives his word, he refuses to break it. Because of that, he chose the black cat to represent him. Still, he made it perfectly clear that the visit did not need to be complicated. The cat only had to appear for a moment, prove that he had come, and then return home immediately. Unfortunately, now that the black cat has actually reached the city, he has no idea what he is supposed to do next. The streets are completely empty, meaning there is nobody around to witness his arrival or confirm that he fulfilled the dragon's promise. After thinking about it, he remembers that humans usually sleep during the night. The cats living in town are probably asleep as well, so waiting outside would accomplish nothing. With no better option, he decides to enter the royal palace by himself. Looking across the city, he assumes the enormous building in the distance must be the palace. He strengthens his body with magic, leaps high into the air, and lands directly on top of the outer wall. Once he gets a closer look at the structure, he cannot help feeling impressed. For creatures with no natural magic or claws, humans had somehow managed to construct something truly magnificent. Even after entering the palace grounds, however, the cat still has no idea where the newborn prince is being kept. Since searching blindly would probably take all night, he decides to find somewhere quiet to sleep and ask for directions once the humans wake up in the morning. But when he climbs through a nearby window, he hears a soft whining sound coming from a bed inside the room. Curious, he moves closer and discovers the infant prince lying there. For a moment, the black cat is not even sure what he is looking at. He has never seen a human baby before, and considering how large adult humans are, he never expected their children to start out this tiny. The baby suddenly opens his eyes and notices the unfamiliar animal standing nearby. Realizing that the prince is about to cry, the black cat quickly begins swaying his tail back and forth in front of him. Thankfully, the movement immediately grabs the baby's attention. Instead of screaming, the prince becomes fascinated by the tail and quietly watches it move. A maid who had heard the child making noise enters the room a moment later. At first, she is terrified when she sees a black cat standing over the royal baby. But after taking a closer look, she realizes that this must be the visitor sent by the cat dragon. Knowing that the dragon would never allow one of his cats to harm the prince, she quickly calms down. The black cat explains that he never intended to sneak into the palace. He simply arrived at night and could not find anyone outside to speak with. Since the maid is here now, he asks her to inform the king that he has arrived and would like to meet him the following morning, and the maid agrees and promises to deliver the message. The following morning, the black cat is brought before the king inside the throne room. The king turns out to be an incredibly loud and straightforward man, and he wastes no time asking what the cat thinks of his newborn son. Crowbane has no idea how he is supposed to judge him this early. The prince has barely entered the world and probably does not even understand that he exists yet, so there is no possible way to know what kind of man he will eventually become. The king accepts that answer, asks Crowbane to remain in the capital for a while. He wants the cat to stay near the prince, watch him as he grows, and decide whether the boy will become someone worthy of receiving his support. Crowbane agrees to the request, although he realizes that learning the prince's true character will probably take several years. Sure enough, time passes and the prince grows into a healthy and energetic child with Crowbane constantly watching over him. Then one day, while playing outside, the young prince accidentally overhears a serious conversation between the king and the black cat. The human kingdom is currently fighting a war against the demon realm, and although the king would gladly head onto the battlefield and fight beside his soldiers, his position prevents him from recklessly risking his life whenever he pleases. During their conversation, the king mentions hearing that Crowbane recently defeated an entire bear by himself. Since the king understands just how dangerous those creatures are, he considers that achievement undeniable proof of the cat's strength. Crowbane has even become something of a hero among the cat Sith because almost no other cat would dare challenge a bear alone, let alone actually defeat one. But Crowbane explains that he is not necessarily the only cat capable of such a feat. When he was younger, he and several of his siblings once worked together to bring down a bear. Because of that, he believes they have probably grown strong enough to defeat one on their own by now. The king's cat is completely stunned after hearing this, and asks whether Crowbane is actually one of the legendary kitten siblings who killed a bear during their youth. She then excitedly asks what became of the rest of them, but despite being family, Crowbane admits that he has no idea what his siblings are currently doing. They separated a long time ago and have not seen one another since. Still, he suspects that at least a few of them may have eventually made their way into this city. The king is delighted by the possibility and says he would love to meet Crowbane's siblings someday. But before their conversation can continue, the prince suddenly calls out from nearby. He proudly announces that the tree climbing challenge was far too easy and demands that Crowbane give him something harder to do right now. Crowbane excuses himself from the king and heads over to prepare the prince's next challenge. Eventually, the demon king mentioned by the human ruler is finally defeated. The members of the hero's party who joined forces to bring him down arrive in the capital to personally thank the king for providing supplies during their campaign. Crowds gather from all over the city to see the adventurers who fought on their behalf, but Curobane is stunned when he recognizes one of the heroes. The man is actually his own brother who mastered transformation magic so he could disguise himself as a human. His brother quietly asks Curobane not to expose him, since he wants to continue living under his human identity a little longer. Curobane has no intention of revealing the truth, but he is still shocked that his brother managed to grow powerful enough to help defeat a demon king in only a few years. Watching the hero party also leaves a powerful impression on the young prince. Later that evening, he tells Curobane that he wants to become stronger. When the cat asks what is driving him, the prince explains that he wants to become someone worthy of standing beside Curobane. And to reach that level, he believes he will need to experience countless adventures and keep challenging himself. His answer catches Curobane's interest, and from that moment onward, the cat decides to devote everything he has to helping the prince grow. Still, he reminds the boy that magic alone will not be enough if he truly intends to become an adventurer. He will also need to master a weapon. The prince is eager to begin immediately, and from that day forward, his brutal training officially starts. By the time Prince Stan reaches the age of 12, he has already become strong enough to defeat a bear by himself. In fact, he is currently dragging the enormous creature into the Adventurers Guild so he can sell it. Naturally, he does not want to terrify the workers too much, so he casually claims that he merely found the bear lying in the forest. Unfortunately for him, absolutely nobody believes that ridiculous excuse. Before things reached this stage, Stan had been attending a formal party inside the castle. He seems incredibly popular, with nearly every young noblewoman in attendance gathering around him. They can hardly believe he is only 12 years old, especially with how strong and mature he already looks. After dancing with several of them, Stan finally excuses himself from the rest of the celebration because the entire experience has completely worn him out. He certainly enjoys being admired, but he cannot understand why every girl around him seems obsessed with romance. Stan has no interest in anything like that right now. Wanting to clear his head, he asks Curobane whether he would like to go on an adventure with him. The cat immediately likes the idea, since it has been far too long since the two of them last went hunting together. Not long afterward, a large shipment of wine arrives for the king's birthday celebration. Stan spends the first half of the day greeting visitors, attending ceremonies, and performing every duty expected of a proper prince. However, it soon becomes obvious that he was only behaving so his father would not become suspicious, and the moment the king looks away, Stan and Curobane slip out of the castle, leaving behind nothing but a message announcing that they have gone on an adventure. When the king discovers what happened, he is furious with himself for allowing Stan to fool him so easily. Even so, he is not truly worried about their safety. He knows exactly how powerful both Stan and Curobane have become, and he is confident that very little outside the castle could pose a genuine threat to either of them. At the same time, Curobane and Stan are sprinting as fast as possible, desperate to leave the kingdom before anyone recognizes them. Their goal is to cross into the neighboring nation and finally begin their adventure for real. Once they have put a safe distance between themselves and the capital, the two decide to stop for the night. To make himself harder to identify, Stan cuts his hair and plans to pose as a simple country boy when they reach the next town, where he can register as an adventurer without raising suspicion. But before any of that can happen, they need some sleep, so Stan climbs into a tree and falls asleep almost immediately. Curobane settles down as well, but after spending the last several years sleeping in comfortable beds, he has clearly lost his ability to rest outdoors. He cannot help feeling slightly embarrassed that Stan is adapting to the situation far more easily than he is. However, the next day, when he looks over again, he finds Stan standing on the ground wearing nothing except a loincloth. Confused, Curobane asks what he is doing, and Stan explains that he decided to bury his royal clothes. An expensive outfit like that would make it far too easy for people to recognize him. Curobane understands the reasoning, but he is starting to suspect that Stan may be enjoying this runaway adventurer act a little too much. Just then, Stan notices an unsuspecting rabbit nearby, and without hesitation, he jumps on it and instantly begins eating the shit raw. Curobane is horrified and warns him that eating uncooked meat could make him sick. Stan calmly tells him not to worry, since he knows how to reinforce his body with magic and protect himself from illness. Not long afterwards, Stan hears the roar of a bear somewhere in the forest. Curobane warns him that deliberately picking a fight with a bear out here would be completely reckless. Stan ignores him and charges straight toward the sound anyway, leaving Curobane with no choice but to follow and support him. Together, they manage to defeat the creature, which brings everything back to the scene at the Adventurers Guild. After selling the bear, Stan receives a surprisingly large amount of money. With it, he can finally buy ordinary clothes and a basic set of adventuring equipment and can barely contain his excitement. Curobane quickly reminds him not to get carried away, since his career as an adventurer has only just begun. More importantly, he needs to find a weapon capable of handling his actual strength. Thinking about it, Stan admits that the cheap knife he bought is far too unreliable and probably was not worth the money. The weapon that would suit him best is the special sword stored inside the castle vault, since it can conduct magical power. Unfortunately, there is no way for him to return and take it now. With no better option available, Stan decides to keep strengthening his body and magic until he eventually finds a proper weapon. The following morning, Stan and Curlbane gather their belongings and leave town. The residents remain deeply confused by the strange boy they met because Stan was built like an absolute monster. Anyone capable of carrying an entire bear into town with one freaking hand was obviously far from ordinary, yet nobody had any clue who the hell he really was. Then shortly after Stan leaves, an official report arrives from the kingdom announcing that the young prince has escaped from the capital. The townspeople are left completely stunned when they see his description and realize that the missing prince looks exactly like the unbelievably strong boy who just walked out of town. On one of the following days, a white cat begins pestering the dragon for permission to travel beyond the forest and explore the outside world. The dragon immediately refuses, warning that leaving their territory is far too dangerous. He might have considered it if the cat only wanted to visit a nearby human settlement, but wandering into lands that none of them know anything about is completely different. He explains that the regions beyond the forest are crawling with monsters far more dangerous than any bear. None of that manages to discourage the cat, which insists that hearing about those places is not enough and wants to witness them personally. The dragon continues rejecting the request at first, but after being begged nonstop for several days, his patience finally runs out. He reluctantly grants permission, though only under one condition. Before the cat leaves, the dragon must place a tracking mark on its body so he can always know where it is. The white cat accepts without hesitation, and once the dragon finishes applying the mark, it happily sets off alone and begins its long-awaited journey. Before too long, it reaches the base of a mountain. Since unfamiliar monsters could appear at any moment, the cat decides it would be smarter to restore its energy before continuing. Unfortunately, the only prey available in the open area consists of field mice, and after eating them countless times back home, it has no desire to have another one. Hoping to find something better, the cat enters the nearby woods in search of birds or squirrels instead. The deeper it goes, the more satisfied it becomes because the forest is filled with birds and finding a meal should be easy. But just as the cat chooses its first target, it notices a young girl hiding on a branch above. Her presence had been concealed so perfectly that the cat never sensed her at all. Assuming she is stalking the same bird, it decides not to interfere and allows her to take the prey, since anyone capable of hiding that well has already earned a catch in the cat's eyes. A short time later, the girl creeps close enough to trap the bird with her net. Unfortunately, the momentum sends her flying out of the tree and crashing onto the ground below. The white cat approaches to make sure she has not been injured. When the girl hears it speak, she stares in complete disbelief and assumes the fall must have caused her to hallucinate. But the cat assures her that she is fully awake and that the talking animal in front of her is real. She remains doubtful, since she never knew cats were capable of human speech. The cat explains that nearly all of its brothers and sisters can communicate with humans, so there is nothing particularly impressive about it. More importantly, it warns the girl to stop throwing herself from trees while hunting, because if she continues behaving that recklessly, sooner or later she is going to injure herself seriously. The girl tells the cat that he does not need to be concerned, since she is much tougher than she looks and can handle a few falls. Even so, the cat believes there has to be a safer and more practical way for her to hunt. The girl admits that the reckless method he just witnessed is basically the only one she knows. When the cat asks why her parents never taught her properly, she quietly explains that she never had any parents because she grew up as an orphan. Hearing that makes the cat feel sorry for her, but it also makes her achievement far more impressive. Somehow, the girl managed to teach herself enough about hunting to survive without anyone guiding her. The girl then examines the single bird she caught and realizes it will not provide nearly enough food for everyone waiting back home. The cat is relieved to learn that she at least has somewhere to return to, so he asks who she lives with. The girl explains that she stays in an orphanage with 6 other children and their teacher, making 8 people altogether. That is why she intends to continue hunting until she gathers enough meat to feed all of them. The cat has no intention of watching her throw herself out of another tree, so he offers to take care of the hunting instead. The girl initially doubts that such a small animal can collect enough food for an entire orphanage, but the cat confidently reminds her that hunting is what cats do best. He quickly proves it by combining his natural instincts with lightning magic, bringing down several animals in almost no time. The girl is thrilled by the result and immediately begins removing the feathers from the birds. Confused by what she is doing, the cat asks why she is plucking them so soon. She explains that she is preparing the meat so it can be cooked into soup once they return home. The word soup instantly gets the cat's attention, and he remembers tasting a human-made soup many years ago, and the flavor was so incredible that he has wanted another bowl ever since. The girl happily invites him to come back with her and share dinner with everyone at the orphanage. The cat accepts the offer without needing even a second to think about it. Not long afterward, the girl returns to the orphanage with the white cat following beside her. The other children immediately surround them, amazed by the huge amount of meat she managed to bring home. They are equally curious about the unfamiliar cat and ask whether he helped the girl during the hunt. The cat quickly corrects them and proudly announces that he did far more than simply help. He was responsible for catching most of the food, so he expects to receive proper credit. Just like the girl earlier, The children are completely stunned when they hear a cat speaking their language, since none of them has ever encountered anything like him before. Their caretaker, however, is far less interested in the talking animal than he is in the fact that Gally went hunting again after being directly told not to. Seeing the priest scold her leaves the cat feeling reassured. Gally and the other children may be orphans, but at least they have a responsible adult genuinely looking after them. The priest explains that he keeps forbidding Gally from hunting because she somehow returns injured almost every single time. Gally immediately insists that nothing happened to her today, but the cat exposes the lie without hesitation. He personally watched her fall out of a tree and crash straight into the ground earlier that day. From everything he has heard, the priest figures out that Gally only returned safely because the white cat stayed beside her in the forest. He offers the animal his sincere gratitude, but the cat acts as though it was nothing worth mentioning. After witnessing Gally's disastrous approach to hunting, leaving her alone simply was not an option. And more importantly, Gally had already promised him a place at the dinner table once the soup was ready. The priest happily confirms that the invitation still stands and welcomes him to remain at the orphanage for as long as he pleases. Gally then attempts to disappear into the kitchen while nobody is paying attention, but the priest catches her before she gets far. She insists that she is only trying to start dinner, yet he refuses to let her escape the conversation so easily. First, she needs to understand that charging into danger without considering the outcome could eventually cost her far more than a few bruises, and Gally finally admits she was wrong and gives him a proper apology. The cat watches with satisfaction, hoping the warning will stop her from repeating the same stupidity next time. Once Gally begins preparing the meal, however, the remaining children immediately turn their attention toward their unusual guest. At first, the cat allows them to play because he knows they are only curious kids, but that patience does not last forever. They quickly become obsessed with his tail, pulling it, stroking it, and passing it between them until he looks completely defeated. Gally finishes the soup just before he reaches his limit, and everyone gathers around the table. After the priest completes their prayer, the children eagerly start eating and once again declare that nobody cooks better than Gally. The cat assumes they are exaggerating until he tastes it himself, but one spoonful is enough to completely change his opinion of her. Gally may be hopeless in the forest, but inside a kitchen, she is nothing less than a divine being of soup. After dinner, the priest asks the cat to accompany him somewhere private. He leads him toward a secured room at the rear of the building, then opens the entrance through magic. That immediately catches the cat's attention, and he asks why an orphanage would need such protection. The priest reveals that the room holds weapons from the years he spent working as an adventurer. Keeping the door magically sealed is the safest way to stop curious children from wandering inside and accidentally hurting themselves. The cat never expected the children's quiet caretaker to have such a history. According to the priest, his old profession carried him through many distant regions, including the forest where the cat was raised. Since creatures from that forest rarely wander this far, he naturally wants to know what motivated the journey. The cat tells him that he is searching for land no one has claimed before, hoping to establish a territory that belongs entirely to him. The dragon resisted the idea for days before finally allowing him to leave, so returning without accomplishing anything is not an option. Understanding that the cat has already made up his mind, the priest unfolds a map and points out the route leading toward the mountain region. Reaching it is possible, but crossing straight through would expose him to some of the most dangerous creatures in the area. If survival matters more than speed, the priest recommends following the longer road that circles around the mountains instead. The warning does not change the cat's mind, and since he is searching for a place worthy of becoming his territory, avoiding the mountains could mean passing up some incredible scenery or even the perfect location. Still, he knows the route will require plenty of energy, so he decides to rest properly before setting out. Hearing that, the priest offers to let him remain at the orphanage for several days. Gally can keep feeding him the soup he clearly loves, and the children would certainly enjoy having him around. That sounds like an excellent arrangement, so the cat accepts. By the following day, however, he is already questioning that decision. Another crowd of children has surrounded him, and somehow there are even more hands petting him than the day before. His suffering finally ends when the priest steps outside and announces that lessons are about to begin. Every child immediately rushes into the church, leaving the confused cat behind with Gally. She explains that the building also serves as a school, and the additional children come there to study under the priest. Naturally, the cat wonders why Gally is not joining them. According to her, she has already completed everything the priest is capable of teaching her, so instead of attending class, she normally visits the Adventurers Guild and accepts whatever work is available. Learning that Gally is an adventurer leaves the cat genuinely concerned. Considering the hunting disaster he witnessed yesterday, he cannot imagine her surviving dangerous missions. Gally quickly clarifies that she mostly accepts gathering jobs involving medicinal roots, berries, and similar materials. The cat never realized adventurers could earn money from work that sounded so simple. Gally explains that collecting the plants themselves is not particularly difficult. The problem is that they grow in dangerous sections of the forest, and ordinary people would rather pay someone else than risk entering those areas. That explanation does little to ease the cat's concern, since Gally still has to face the danger herself, but she assures him that she is capable of defending herself with magic. The priest taught her how to use it some time ago, and she apparently possesses a great deal of magical talent. Unfortunately, that talent is not very helpful for hunting, because the only spell she has learned is explosion magic, which would probably destroy the prey along with everything around it. After stopping by the guild and accepting a request, Gally heads into the forest with the cat to search for the required plants. As they begin working, he asks why humans need this particular herb. Gally explains that it can be used in many different medicines, but removing it from the ground is frustratingly slow. Every root has to remain intact, meaning she cannot simply pull it out carelessly. The cat does not see what makes the task so difficult. Using magic, he extracts one of the plants almost instantly without damaging a single root. The demonstration leaves Gally amazed, and she immediately begs him to gather the remaining herbs from her. He has absolutely no interest in doing her quest, but Gally knows exactly how to change his mind. She promises him an extra serving of soup that evening, and that is all the encouragement he needs, as only a few minutes later, Gally is standing beside a bag completely filled with undamaged plants. Just as Gally and a white cat are about to head back, they hear something moving nearby and quickly realize that monsters are approaching, so both of them immediately get ready to fight. The cat strikes first, sending one creature flying with a punch before immobilizing the other two. Gally takes advantage of the opening and unleashes her explosion spell. The blast is far more destructive than the cat imagined. Every monster is completely wiped out, while Gally barely looks tired afterward. At that point, it becomes obvious that she was not exaggerating when she claimed to possess exceptional magical talent. Her real problem is that she never bothered learning anything besides explosion magic because she found magical training too tedious. She also has poor control over her enormous mana reserves, so she still needs plenty of practice before she can properly cast other spells. Once the fight is over, they continue walking home with the herbs they collected. Along the way, the white cat suddenly offers to teach Gally how to use more forms of magic. She turns around with mild curiosity, willing to hear what he has to say. In the cat's imagination, Gally will obviously accept once she realizes his lessons could make gathering herbs and roots much easier. Better yet, if he helps her become more efficient, he might be rewarded with an endless supply of her delicious soup. That fantasy disappears the moment Gally casually rejects the offer, saying that learning magic sounds like too much work. Refusing to give up, the cat starts listing all the benefits she could gain from different spells, including more money and plenty of meat. Gally still does not seem particularly excited, but she eventually agrees under one condition: the lessons cannot last too long. That is enough for the cat. Filled with determination, he becomes eager to transform her into a first-class mage. Sometime later, the dragon secretly watches the two of them while disguised as a cat. He had been concerned about allowing the white cat to travel so far from home, but after seeing the kind people at the orphanage, he decides it is safe to leave him in their care. The white cat then senses the dragon nearby but says nothing, understanding that he wants to remain unnoticed. Once the dragon quietly departs, the cat follows Gally, excited to begin her magical training. And as more time passes, he chooses to remain with her, and the two eventually become inseparable friends. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next episode.